So please welcome Sally Sloley, Agile Coach, visual management expert, and long-time catalyst in the global Agile community with over 2 decades of experience
On
and
mute?
a passion of turning complexity into clarity. She is here to bring powerful insights to the stage. Please give a big round of applause for Sally Sloley.
Thank you all. Welcome. Thank you for sticking around with me till the last session. These are always some of my personal favorites. Just me standing between you and your last break. All right, so for those of you who don't know me, I'm Sally Sloley. I'm an Agile coach currently living and working out of Sydney, Australia. And I delved into the Agile space around 2011 when I was a web developer at Microsoft headquarters in Seattle. And I wasn't really happy with my work. A lot of micromanagement, a lot of waterfall, a lot of long nights, a lot of projects that didn't come through, a lot of yelling and screaming. And when I discovered all things Agile and Lean and Scrum and Kanban, I realized that life could be brilliant. And for several years, everything was brilliant. My teams were great. We experimented. Our managers let us do our thing. And then I moved to Australia. And pretty much the only people that were in this space were the consultancies. And they would come in with hordes of people who had zero experience in the tech world, in HR, in marketing, in anything business, and worse, no knowledge of agility. And just shy of about 2 years ago, I quit a job because I couldn't take it anymore, and I went home and I wrote a blog post that ended up being about 4 pages long, and I figured no one was ever going to read it. So I started the hashtag #StopBadAgile on LinkedIn, and through a series of interactions with other coaches from around the world, I ended up turning it into a series with birds that help me say the quiet part out loud. One thing I will say that gets misunderstood quite a bit, these birds aren't saying that if you're doing these things, you're bad or wrong and you have to stop. What it's saying is that these things aren't part of agility or lean or Kanban or Scrum or anything else, but they're being sold that way to companies that are making millions upon millions of dollars at the expense of the sad teams that have to go through what they're selling. So let's start with one of the biggest ones. You can't buy an Agile transformation. There is no box of Agile for you to install and put into your company. It just doesn't work that way. We've heard quite a few people this morning talking about the pains of when you don't have humans at the heart of what's happening or when it's not contextual. There's no Agile op model. Almost every consultancy walks into a company and sells an op model and says, you need to reorg your teams in this way and you need to do these things. And it's just painful to watch because the one thing they never look at is, what are you doing today and why are you doing it? How did you get where you are? And if some of that is working, we don't want to touch that. We don't want to, break what's, we don't want to, break what's fixed. But we, at the same time, don't want to fix things if we don't know what's broken. There's no Agile playbook. Every time I go to a company, the first thing they want me as a coach to do is write them a whole bunch of playbooks so people can do it without me. It was like, if they could do it with just a playbook, somebody really brilliant, much more brilliant than I, would have written it, and they would sell it, and it would be a bestseller, and no one would need us. Then why do we have to keep coming in? It's because they keep breaking things, and we keep having to try to fix them. There's no such thing as an Agile transformation roadmap. I don't know what it's like here, but the consultancies back home almost all have the same slide on their slide deck. And it's a little roadmap that says you're going to start here, you're going to tick all the boxes, and in 18 months, magically, all of your teams are going to be Agile. Never happens. This is a common one that they say, the Agile coaches are there to manage executives and stakeholders. How many of you are coaches out there or Scrum Masters who've worked with leadership teams? Yeah. Have you ever been able to manage? No, we've got to work with them and understand who they are and what their motivations are. We saw the moving motivators earlier. If you don't know these kind of things, you're not going to get anywhere. Using an Agile framework does not guarantee agility. I cannot tell you how many companies I've walked into that say, well, all of our dev teams have been using Scrum and they're all Agile and they've been doing this for years, and you walk in and you realize there's not an ounce of agility. It's just them going through the hamster wheel motions of all of the meetings, and they don't understand why they haven't gotten any better, or nothing feels good, or their managers aren't praising them. Another fun one with us, I don't know if you have them here, but they've started taking change managers and turning them into Agile change managers. Agile isn't something you can manage. You can't say, okay, table 1, you're going to be Agile by next week. Table 2, we're going to get you on board 3 weeks later. It doesn't happen. If you're moving to a new building and somebody has to organize the moves and the people and all these things, yes, change manage away. But there's no way to change manage agility. Scaling frameworks. If someone brings you a scaling framework before they know who you are, what you do, why you do it, once again, it's going to hurt. If you throw a framework on top of a broken system, it's not going to help anything. Again, it's not something you can implement. Everybody wants you to come in and implement agility, and what they mean by that is force our teams to do 2-week sprints so we can be Agile. And the consultancies tell them that's a thing that can be done. Next, we get into the op models that get sold. Currently in Australia, there's one company that is selling 3 flavors of their op model. Every time it fails, they come back, charge even more money, and bring in the next flavor because they're like, oh, we've improved. No, they haven't. They've made it worse. But if they tell you that your new op model requires hundreds or sometimes even thousands of Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, there's not going to be any Agile. If an op model mandates that the same set of roles have to be filled for every org, there's going to be no agility. They've taken the whole everybody has to do the same thing at once to another level. And one company actually will send reports to management saying, we've reorged you, but oh, you're missing 2 Scrum Masters, 2 BAs, a delivery manager, and something else. You're not in compliance with the op model. How much actual agility do you think these people are seeing? If it mandates compliance, there's going to be no agility. We heard a couple of times today, this stuff has to be contextual. People have to buy into it. There's no way just forcing compliance is ever going to help anybody. It's actually going to shut people down, ruin productivity, and stifle any sort of innovation. Oh, this was another fun one that actually the company came in and actually sold this to us, and my management, even though they kept claiming they were Agile, bought this. If your transformation team has either command or control or both in their title, they don't want Agile. Once again, they want compliance. Oh, if someone tells you to do a reorg based on what they've got, I'm going through this right now. My company went through a mandated reorg, and even while it was happening, which was before me, most of them said, well, this makes no sense. And now here we are 9 months later, and they're still saying this makes no sense. Fortunately, I'm there and hopefully can help. Another scaling one. If you don't have a solid Agile foundation, you don't have anything to scale. So for example, if you don't have fully functioning, working, good Scrum teams, you can't scale that. And frankly, if you do have a solid Agile foundation, odds are you don't need a scaling framework. It'll actually set you back. Popularity doesn't make a framework fit for purpose. So many companies I go into are sold the idea that you have to start with Scrum, you have to do Scrum, you have to do 2-week Scrum and 2-week Scrum only. It's not fit for purpose for everyone. When I see this happen to integration teams, when I see it happen to support teams, when I see it happen to HR, when every single person is working on completely different stuff and they're struggling, and you just go, it's not one size fits all. Again, you cannot live under a command and control environment. If you've got nothing but micromanagers who are asking you to do crazy things, don't listen to the consultants who sell you that this is the way. Another big one that happens is people finally go from doing years-long plans down to quarterly plans. And while that's mostly a good thing, the people who are selling this never tell people that these aren't commitments to deliver. They're commitments to focus. So going from a focus of 3 years down to 1 year down to quarters is a really good thing. But they're never told that this isn't commitments to deliver. So you see people in quarterly plannings going, okay, these are the things we must do and you will get them done. But as we know, even Scrum teams in 2, 3, 4-week sprints or fewer, they can't predict everything that's going to happen. There's just no way to know. Another big focus recently has been on culture, and culture is incredibly important to determining whether your Agile efforts are going to stick. You've got to have that support. Again, your command and control, it's not going to stick. Supportive environments can make it stick, but we can't install it, and yet they sell us as the installers of culture. And when the culture doesn't change just because Agile coaches are on the ground, people get frustrated. They wonder what they're paying us for. Another big one for me is conformity of boards. Visualization of work in my world is so important. You miss so many things if you're not seeing what's going on, but they get sold that every team has to have the exact same setup. It's insanity. Kanban's always the most misunderstood. At least with Scrum, you've got your Scrum guide. It breaks things down. It gives you a time box. It gives you meetings. It gives you some accountabilities. It kind of tells you what to do. All of a sudden, everybody wants to force Kanban teams to work in the same way that Scrum teams do, and it happens in SAFe, and it happens with most consultancies because it's easier for them. It's easier for them to sell you a tiny little thing and say, do this and you'll be fine, rather than actually understanding what a Kanban system looks like, because it is complex and it does take a long time to get one right. But in the long run, they might be better off. Another big one is Kanban isn't just for co-located teams. I've sat in a room with people who tell me that if teams aren't co-located, they have to use Scrum. Unclear why. No one's ever been able to tell me why. It's not just for service delivery teams. And honestly, there are people who are, far smarter than me in this world who still say Kanban can't be used in complex systems. And I just go, but wait, I've used it successfully multiple times. Kanban is just a system that allows you to acknowledge the reality of where you are. If you're in mass chaos or complexity, it's okay. You can still use it to help you understand the situation you're in. No such thing as a squad lead on a Scrum team. Currently, the state of Agile in Australia is that I can't read a job description and have any idea what they're asking for. They just keep making stuff up. And this, for me, is one of the most heinous, because all the squad, tribe, chapter, guild, all this stuff is taken from Spotify. And there is no Spotify model. It was a blip in time years ago, and one of the poor guys who did the original videos that started this came out for years and years and years, came out to conference after conference going, please don't copy us. You're not a streaming media company startup from Sweden. Don't copy us. We did it, we experimented, it didn't work, we moved on. Don't do this. And sadly, the last time I posted this online, somebody was like, well, here's his latest video. And if they'd listened closely, what they'd realize is that he said the same thing, don't do this. But he finally backed off and just said, you know what, if you are, you do you. And everybody took that as a sign that it's now a thing. So now they're selling it even more. Retrospectives. When the consultants come in, they tell everybody how to do their retrospectives. Not only do you have to do it, but you got to do it the same way. And so people just day after day with the 3 questions, and they never talk to each other, and they never understand what's happening. They don't understand how to dig deep because they've been sold that this is the only way. So many times I come into a company that's had a big, Agile transformation rollout, and I see their portfolio team, and they're pretending that the CEO is the Scrum Master and that someone else is the product owner, and they're trying to work their portfolio management in sprints. It's the most painful thing I've ever seen. Fortunately, each time I've seen it, I've been able to get them out of it once the consultants leave. But this is painful. Scrum Masters are not team secretaries. I'm almost glad that we're back to the point where it's an accountability and not a role, just so they don't get put into this. But seriously, we lost a couple of our Scrum Masters recently, and the teams came to us and said, but who's going to do our Jira tickets and who's going to build our calendars? It's like, okay, that's not what Scrum Masters do. The worst. Not a single job description that has come out in Australia, or at least in Sydney for the last few years, didn't have Jira admin as a Scrum Master or Agile Coach accountability. I have spent years dreading even looking at Jira because it's so bad and so not fit for purpose. And all of a sudden, you can't even get a job without it. This is another interesting one. It is not necessary for Scrum teams to pre-plan their sprints. But between a combination of Jira making it possible and SAFe saying you have to plan your entire sprints while you're doing your quarterly plannings or PI plannings or whatever they call it, teams are now wasting time pre-planning months of sprints, which for anybody who's worked in a Scrum team knows, most of that work is going to get thrown away. You're going to learn things as you go. You're going to change. But the consultancies don't want you to know that. They don't want to teach you how to get your people to think for themselves and build something great. They just want you to follow the playbook. Another one, they think we enforce Scrum compliance. Who wants to be forced to do work against their will? Show of hands? Yeah, that's what I thought. And yet, this is the predominant thing that gets sold. This I keep seeing more and more in the last 3 years. I have seen more Scrum teams with multiple product owners than I can count at this point. One product owner. If you've got to have 3 product owners, don't do Scrum. It's very simple. But again, it's being sold as the one and only thing you can do. So no one knows to question it. There's no such thing as an Agile Scrum framework. What does that even mean? There's no Agile framework, and while Scrum is a framework, it's not necessarily Agile. It won't necessarily bring you agility. It's just there to kind of help. So the things that they tell, and then of course I have to go in and respect where they are and try to guide them through getting them past all of the bad language, and it's rather painful. Agile teams do not have to have fewer than 10 people. Yes, that is the recommendation from Scrum. And when you can get a small team, yes, it can help tremendously. It can get you communicating better and faster and sharing more. It's a beautiful thing when it works. But in most cases, well, not most cases, but in a lot of cases, I've seen teams that are 20 and 30 people, and at the moment where they are and how they are, there's nothing you can do about that other than force them to break up. So it's a whole lot better to keep them together and let them discover the challenges as they go and figure out if and when they want to split. But again, what's being sold and what us coaches and Scrum Masters are being forced to do is comply with something that doesn't make sense for the actual teams. Scrum Masters are not project managers. Nowadays, with all of the failed Agile transformations, people are, getting rid of roles. They're combining roles. They're trying to do more with less, even though when they had more, they couldn't do it. How are they gonna make this happen? And really, they're 2 completely different skill sets for most people. Sure, I've seen people who can do both roles, but you're not supposed to do them at the same time. Scrum is not training wheels for Agile. You do not have to get good at Scrum before you can explore other avenues. You could do none of this stuff and actually be more Agile than you can thinking like this. This is another really interesting one. We were always taught that retrospectives were a safe space for teams to talk about their challenges, to deal with and air out and consult with each other on the things that get in their way. At least 3 consultants in my area have been selling that you have to do a retrospective report and you have to share that with your manager at the end of every sprint. And I definitely encourage teams to share bits and pieces, to share the things that they need to escalate or to share the things that they're seeing so that their management starts to understand what the challenges are. But it is not mandatory. When I was a Scrum Master, I actually used to take my people off site. We never did retrospectives on site, never let managers in unless there was some reason why we wanted them there. And we certainly did not talk about the things that we talked about. This is another bizarre one for me. They sell Kanban as more difficult than Scrum. And I've had a lot of talks with a lot of people, and I've thought about this a lot. And I think what's really going on is that the consultancies not only don't understand Kanban systems, but they don't understand how to monetize it. With Scrum, they can sell you Scrum Masters or give you a few for free to get you going. Same with product owners. They can sell you product owners. They can sell you all these trainings. But Kanban requires more inspecting and adapting rather than following a program. So they don't want you to do that. They want to make it seem like it's out of your reach. Recently, again, last couple of years especially, I have had at least 4 managers and Agile coaches come up to me after they've been force-feeding different things down people's throats and go, well, now do you see why they were so reluctant? Do you see why I had to force it on them? And I have no words. Even to this day, I've thought of ways to respond, but I still can't bring myself to do it. It's not a push system. We create pulls so that the people who want the help, the people who need the help, we go to them. We build trust with them. We get them to understand that they can continue to improve, and we let them evangelize it. It's not just for maintenance and support. My kids use Kanban. During pandemic, I taught other parents when they suddenly found themselves with school-age children and didn't know how to be teachers. It was like, start a Kanban system. Put some little rewards up. Get some colorful sticky notes. Your kids are going to love it. If children can do it, why would it be for only one type of work? Kanban teams are not required to work in sprints. For any of you who have worked under SAFe, several implementations of it, and honestly, I don't know if this is something that SAFe prescribes or not. I attribute it to the consultancies who don't know any better. But they force Kanban teams to work in 2-week sprints and follow all of the Scrum events. Ooh, that's a Scrum team. So why would you do that? They always want us to implement Agile practices or Agile best practices. There are no best practices. And why would I implement the same practices to every single team? I guarantee you, if I turned all of you tables into teams right now and gave you the same project, none of you would work on it the same way. None of you would work on it at the same rate, no matter how many people you have. And none of you would think about it in the same way. And you shouldn't have to. Oh, another one that they love now is, you're going to move the Agile agenda forward. Does anybody know what the Agile agenda is? Because, yeah, I don't. I've never heard of this. They want us to create alignment to a playbook or a framework. But what they're saying is not fix your challenges or understand what's stopping you from being amazing. It's just go through the motions. Hiring an Agile coach, you get what you ask for. This one came up because so many of the consultancies were coming into our HR departments and telling them how to set up job descriptions. And what they were essentially asking for were not people who understood agility or Scrum or XP or Kanban or lean thinking or systems thinking or design or CX. They knew nothing about any of this. It was just put someone in a seat and we take the credit for it. We can't deliver transformational change, but this is what the consultants promise. And suddenly we've got, tons of managers going, why isn't the whole company Agile by now? It's been 6 months. You're going, but wait, really? This could take 5, 7, 10 years, sometimes more, depends on what's happening. but they've been sold the idea that they can get there quickly. Agile coaches and coming in from consultancies, they love to bring Gantt charts for when everybody's going to be agile. They've got pretty little charts. This department's going to be done by July. This department will be done by the end of the year, and it never, ever happens. This is one of the worst. Consultants come in, and they know that there aren't enough Agile coaches to go around. So what do? They pick people at random, and they go, I dub thee Agile coach. Go forth and spread the joy. But just changing someone's title doesn't make them a coach. This isn't an entry-level position. This isn't something you wake up one morning and go, hey, I just got out of college. I'm going to be an Agile coach tomorrow. Can't happen. We don't enforce processes. Even with Scrum teams, we know what, kind of the rules of Scrum are, but we're not there to force them to do a daily Scrum. We're not there to force them to do a sprint review or a retrospective. You can't make people change. Or, as the consultants have found out, they can in the short term, but then those of us who come in later have to pick up the pieces when it doesn't work. There is no room for force. You cannot force change. I think it was my husband Alex was talking to someone earlier about, do you have children? If you have small children, you ask them to do things, you tell them to do things. How often do they do the things? You're their parent and you can't force them to do things. I, as an Agile coach, certainly cannot, and more importantly, will not. Micromanaging individual capacity. This has been going on for about 10 years now. In fact, I quit an early job in Australia because they were bringing in a new Jira tool called Jira Align. It wasn't called that back then. But I took one look at the inner workings of that tool and I went, this is a micromanager's dream. This has nothing to do with what I do. I can't stay here for this. There are now multiple tools out there that force people to put in every minute of every day, and they're judging you on your individual capacity and telling you when, you're out of compliance. I don't know about you, but what takes me an hour one day could take me 2 days the next, because we're human. We think differently every day. We have external pressures. We have internal pressures. We have good days. We have bad days. There's no way to manage individual capacity. One of the worst for me. Our focus is not to standardize ways of working. Every consultancy I come across says that everybody has to work the same exact way at the same exact time. And it's so funny because when I go in and I point out that having 20 Scrum teams that are all dependent on each other, all working in the same cadence at the same time, removes all ability to collaborate. Because if you're all doing your events at the same time, how can you go to another team and talk to them about how you collaborate? It's impossible, and yet it's being forced on people. Making team boards identical. I've never seen 2 Kanban boards in a company unless they're doing the very simple to-do, doing, done. I've never seen the real reflection of work ever be the same across teams. And I've seen this happen with 3 teams working in the exact same backlog. I remember one group, I had someone doing 2-week sprints, someone doing 3-week sprints, and someone doing Kanban. They were all completely different cadences, and it was beautiful because they were able to collaborate. But that's not what's sold. What's sold is lockstep. Yeah, if someone tells you that, hey, we were at company X last year and this is the thing that we did, here, you go do it. Back to the Spotify model, what do you think the odds are that that's actually going to help anyone? Velocity is not a mandatory metric. It is not an Agile metric. Yes, and I know I loved your talk earlier when you were saying this. It just isn't. It's a tool for the teams to use to have better conversations for themselves. The consultancies I work with, they're actually forcing it to be mandatory across even Kanban teams. We don't do that. But they make it so much that everybody hates it and nobody knows how to use it well, and it's so misused that it becomes a metric that's not only useless for management, but it's also useless for the teams. Yeah, I'm going to go back to my most hated tool. There's no such thing as Agile software. There's no such thing. There are multiple software programs that can help you, depending on your context, depending on what you want to see. Unfortunately, with Jira, if you're a small Scrum team and you're set up for success as a Scrum team, it's okay. It's a valid tool. It's fine. It helps you get rid of some of the drama with stopping and starting your sprints. But if you're in a Kanban system, it's so limiting that you're never going to grow beyond. And from my perspective, for things like portfolio teams, they're never going to understand the true nature of their work if they can't see it, and it stifles that vision. But it's the one thing that's sold as part of the package. Changing people's titles and requiring them to now be responsible for skill sets that they don't have does not help anyone. This puts people in fear. They're not only in fear of keeping the job that they have, but they're also in fear that the career they've worked so hard for is now in jeopardy because they're now being put in a position to get better at a job that they didn't ask for, that they didn't want. It's not fair to walk in and force people to conform to something that doesn't make sense in their context. I love it when teams tell me how agile they are. And when I start asking about customers and why they build the things that they do and where's the value to the customers, and they've never met a customer. And the consultants don't tell them that this is something they need, that this is something important. They build things in a vacuum and they just keep going through the motions. And when we ask, where are your customers? They're like, that wasn't in the playbook. First line of the Agile Manifesto. It's about individuals and interactions, not processes and tools. And yet not one consultancy that I've dealt with in years has said anything about individuals and how they interact together and how to make those relationships better. It's all about the processes and the tools. I think we talked about this one earlier, but yeah, there are no Agile best practices. Just because something worked for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work in your context. And that's not to say don't experiment with it if it sounds like it's something that might help you. But just because somebody else did it doesn't mean you have to. Yeah, changing only your ways of working, it's not going to solve your problems. Because 9 times out of 10, you're changing your ways of working to suit someone else, not you. This was an interesting one that's come up recently. Sprints are not 1 to 4 weeks. And I know if people know the history, you're going to look back. I believe it was Scrum Inc. that at one point actually had a slide in their deck that said 1-4 weeks. That has changed. It changed drastically because they realized what was happening is people misinterpreted that to say that there are only 1 week, 2 week, 3 week, and 4 week sprints and that nothing else is allowed. And yet the goal is to get those iterations smaller and smaller and smaller so you're getting feedback faster and faster. So this stuff is misleading, but they're still perpetuating it when they're selling their big box of Agile. Story points aren't mandatory. Not only are they not mandatory, they're not in days and hours. Just because some teams in tech use Scrum does not mean it's good for everyone. A lot of teams feel pressured by the time box. A lot of teams feel that the time boxes should be different. And so just because one team does something doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone else. The whole epics and features. You must use epics and you must use features and you must ladder them up together and everyone must do the same. It's whatever you need that you should be doing. Managers not dictating the sprint lengths or the length of anything. The consultancies come in and say, here is what you must do, follow this, and the managers go, yes, and they never ever question it. User stories. They're taught that user stories are the only format that you can use, but if a user story isn't coming from a user, if it's something that you take into your backlog because your team needs to make a change from your retrospective, you don't need that in user story format. So much work doesn't need to be in story format. Bugs do not need to be in user story format, and yet I see teams being told this is something they must do, and the managers are now standing over them going, well, that's not in user story format. You have to go redo it. It's wrong. Again, no such thing as an Agile change manager. It's sold everywhere. Consultancies are telling people to put this in as a new role. It doesn't exist, and it wouldn't be necessary if it did. One of the most difficult is that people get sold on the idea of either you don't have to prioritize, just simply give the people the work and they'll figure it out, which never happens, or they give them something like Moscow, the must, should, could, won't have system. That's a great thing if you're really bogged down with a lot of projects and you want to know which things you should focus on. But once you get to your must-haves, it's not a prioritization matrix. It tells you what to prioritize. And most of the consultancies don't go further than this. And so we have a really hard time getting management to understand how they need to get better. Once again, nothing about agility should be mandated. Not a single thing. You should be training your people to understand what possibilities are out there, what things they could use, what things they could do, and let them choose. One of my favorite things about SAFE is that they map their dependencies, but I haven't heard any of the consultancies say, by the way, that's not going to help you eliminate them. You might want to get good at eliminating them rather than just putting them up on a wall and acknowledging their existence. We hit on this one earlier too. Metrics are not the whole story. Metrics are not a mandatory starting space. Yes, they can be amazing and useful. And yes, as Agile coaches, we need to be able to show the value in what we bring, but that doesn't just mean metrics. OKRs. Nowadays, the consultants have gotten to the point where they sell that they must be tied to quarterly planning. Some of them go so far as to say they have to be tied to KPIs. So now you've got people who have these arbitrary pie-in-the-sky OKRs that they now have to meet at 100% or their job is in jeopardy. OKRs are just aspirational. They don't have to be met, and they certainly don't have to be met in a certain time frame. Now, my last question for you, and the thing that I want you to help think about over the coming weeks, is what will you now do to help stop bad Agile when you see it in your workplace? Because I guarantee you, if you haven't yet, you will. This is all the ways you can contact me. I'm currently, I'm not on X anymore. I finally got off of there, but I'm still on LinkedIn. I can still be found at my website, sallysloley.com. I'm also on Instagram. I have, at this point, over 125 birds. This was only a few of the ones that I have. If you go out to my site, you can actually see all of them. If you wouldn't mind taking a second, the reason we do these kind of talks is for you, the people in the audience, and we always know that we can improve. I mean, that's part of what we do as Agilists, is we teach people to inspect and adapt, and we want to do the same thing. So if you have any feedback at all for me, I'd love to hear it, because I love making sure that I'm taking in feedback from my audience, because I want to help my customers. The book is done. I have turned this into a book. I'm also turning it into a deck of cards that you'll be able to use in retrospectives. I've had a couple of friends in different countries already do this with leadership teams, where they throw a bunch of the cards on the table and they say, okay, which ones of these have we been sold? Which ones are we still doing, even though maybe we don't think we should? So I'm hoping to have that out, hopefully by the end of the year, if not early next year. There are a few more birds in this deck. I won't have it ready until next week, but if you go out to my website, which is sallysloley.com, I have a page for my speaking, and the deck from this will be available for you by next week, and you can download it as a PDF. Thank you all for coming. Do we have time for any questions, or we hit our time box?